Welcome to the Rogue Startups Podcast, where two startup founders are sharing lessons learned and pitfalls to avoid in their online businesses. And now, here's Dave and Craig.
All right, welcome to episode 257 of Rogue Startups. Craig, how are you this week?
Who's this? Who am I speaking with?
New app. Who dis?
It has been a hot minute, Dave. It's been 3 weeks since we podcasted. And 3 weeks in this, kind of business world is like a year. So yeah, a lot has been going on, but all good. I can't complain. Yeah. How about you?
Same. There's been a ton of things that have gone on. We have a lot to talk about, and including a really hot subject today, which I think will be of interest.
Yeah, I think so. So we'll leave that one dangling for a bit, and maybe give some updates first. Yeah,
sure.
So you have a shiny new toy to talk about?
I do. We just launched a new Shopify app. So it's called Validar, and it does address validation for shipping. And we just pushed it out to the store probably like a week or so ago. And right now we're trying to get beta customers and have people try it out. It's just for Shopify. We're in the process of making it available to Woo, but I don't have all the engineering resources that I need at the moment because there's so many priorities, and poor Mike is running around like a chicken with his head cut off. We've got like random stuff we have to comply with from Twilio. I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's this A2P 10DLC compliance that's going on.
That's an acronym I hadn't heard of. That's a mouthful.
Oh my God, it's a mouthful. Every time I want to say it, I have to like stop and think about it very carefully to make sure I'm not, making something else out of it. But anyway, it's basically app to person 10-digit long code, or just, what you and I would call a regular mobile number. And they're basically trying to reduce spam and just not let any random Tom, Dick, or Harry on the platform sending stuff out. So now you have to actually like register with business profiles, and there's two different levels of it. There's like the uber painful level and the slightly painful level. And thankfully, because of our size, we're only at the slightly painful level, but it requires us to restructure a bunch of shit in reCAPTCHA that we already built. We've got to collect some information from customers we didn't already have. We got to set up the profiles. We got to all of these things for compliance. And we're supposed to get it done by October 1st. It seems like it's not like a deadline where they shut off our service, but it is a deadline that I just wanted off our plate before Black Friday. And, that's coming up. Our lockdown is going to be like beginning of November. So it needs to happen now.
Yep.
Basically. So that's distracting us at the moment. And, we got to get that done. I just got done with the fall edition of Big Snow, which I have decided we are renaming to No Snow TinyConf, because it is in the fall and there was no snow. So both of those are accurate.
There you go.
And that was fantastic. We had a great time. It was good to get away. It was good to catch up with everybody. It was good to hang out. Was
everyone who went to the last in-person, like actual snow one, were they all able to attend?
No, not everybody was. There were a couple of family conflicts, and that was just basically family conflicts. It's kind of a weird time of year, right? With September, end of summer, beginning of school. We tried to put it in the summer, and everybody was like, hell no, like this is not going to work. So we said, fine, how about September? Don't want to go too late because then the weather gets kind of dicey, and we wanted to be able to go outside and do stuff. So we picked September, and it was beautiful. It was absolutely gorgeous up there. It was like 70, 75 degrees when we were up there in the mountains. Super warm. We went on a hike. We went on a boat ride. We had the catered dinners. Everybody did their presentations. We had some campfires in the backyard. Super cool stuff. It was a good time. But yes, some folks weren't able to make it, and we missed them. And some other folks from East came out, and that was great. And we enjoyed the time there. So that was, it was good. It was necessary. I felt like, it'd been like 18 months since we had all sort of connected in person. So that was a good reconstitution of the group. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's been busy here, and there's other stuff. Oh, I lost my cold sales guy. So he was going to do some contract work for me and call the Jilt customers, and he was gearing up to do it, and then his business blew up, couldn't do it anymore, and I'm like, shit.
That's tough. And so like specifically what you were and now are again looking for is like a person to just kind of run a list of contacts you have and give folks a call, get them on the phone, and try to like close a deal, or just schedule a meeting with you?
No, to actually close a deal. So yeah, I was having him go through. I already have a vetted list. We've already warmed them up with email, and I've split it up into those that opened and those that didn't. And we were using those that didn't to warm him up, so that he knew what the sales process looked like, to practice the pitch and sort of refine it. And then he was going to go after the opened list and try to close some of those. And so that's what I needed. We were just going to pay a very simple per lead fee that we had mutually agreed on. And that was going to be, he was just going to do his cold sales thing. And once he had gotten somebody to a point, we would have a list of who he had called, and I would have a list of who had signed up, and we would cross-check those, and I would pay him for the ones that had signed up. So yeah, it just didn't work out, and it doesn't look like he's going to be available anytime soon. So if you are interested in said position, or someone who is good at said position, please absolutely reach out to us, podcast@roguestartups.com. And let me know, because I am definitely in the market for that right now and could definitely use it today.
Yeah, man. I mean, you asked me about this in our Slack channel a couple days ago, and the only thing I know of that's similar to this is not what you need, but it is like an outsource SDR agency where they basically run like outbound email and LinkedIn campaigns to book meetings for folks. But you're looking for that next step in the process, which I don't have a clue. So if anybody out there is interested or has worked with folks like this on a contract and kind of short-term basis, right, Dave? Like a couple months, this kind of whole wave will be over.
Yeah, this isn't a long-term ongoing thing. It's very contract. It's very specific. I've got a pretty sizable list, and it'll take a little while to get through it. But once the list is done, I may repeat the list later in February. But I was trying to get something now and then have a second round at it later after the holidays are over. So at most, it would be like 2 rounds of this based on what I've got. Unless another competitor craters somewhere along the way, in which case I'm going to start the whole damn thing over again. But who knows, right? It's
amazing.
It's just,
amazing. Yeah.
So it's been busy. It's been crazy. Lots going on. How about you, man?
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I mean, similar to kind of your update on Big Snow Tiny Conf, I decided last week that I was ready kind of emotionally. We talked about in episode 253 about kind of going to conferences and the kind of emotional and risk side of it. I decided over here, COVID is as good as it's been in a very long time. And so I'm going to MicroConf Europe next week. Actually leave in a couple days, leave on Saturday.
Nice.
For Dubrovnik. Getting there like a whole day and a little bit early to just kind of fuck around, and have a little personal day. And then Sunday evening retreat, Monday, Tuesday conference, come back Wednesday. So yeah, really looking forward to, seeing Rob and Tracy and Xander and all the folks. And then also just seeing all my friends from Europe that a lot of listen to this podcast and just haven't seen anybody but our couple of friends and my family in a year and a half. So really looking forward to being out. And Ed Freyfogle, who's been on the podcast a couple times, will be there, and he's speaking, and just really looking forward to it. Dave, it's kind of like the last thing, for me, mentally and emotionally with COVID is all right, I'm vaccinated, maybe I'll get a booster or whatever. I'm out in the world now, I'm ready to to kind of be out there and not worry about this stuff anymore. So it feels nice.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, it was, when we all got together, we did the whole COVID test. But as soon as we did that, it was back to normal. And it felt really good to be normal again, to just do the stuff that you used to do, and you weren't worrying about masks, and you weren't worrying about, is somebody going to, get sick, and just all that stuff, right? Yeah, I mean, our worry level has dropped a little bit now that we got our third kid vaccinated, and she's fully immune at this point. I know you're not quite there with your kids yet, but
I don't know if that's the right term, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's as good as it's going to get. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Exactly. Fully immune is probably overstating it a bit. Yes. And that's totally fair. But I mean, she's now as protected as we can make her at this point. And, I can't do any more than that. So I've done my parental duty, and therefore I'm ready to move on.
Yeah. But yeah, really, I mean, just really looking forward to it. Glad I took a day early to kind of have a day for myself, little kind of mini founder retreat. The pictures of the place, it's amazing. It's right on the Aegean Sea. You open your balcony and there's the ocean. It's just really I'll get some good thinking done there, which is cool.
Have you been to Dubrovnik before? You've been, right?
Yeah, I went 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. Yeah, really beautiful place. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sad that this is the last microconf there in Dubrovnik. I really wanted to go, but with other stuff going on, I've got a conference that we're going to in November. We just finished the No Snow here in September. They're looking at something in October with the family. I couldn't make it work logistically. So it was oh man, another time. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the reason I did is this is all I'm doing, through the end of the year at least. So
right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, good for you, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the only other big update, other than just kind of regular work stuff, is we had a remote retreat last week for the team. It was really cool. I wrote a pretty extensive blog post about it. We can link that up in the show notes. But it was really great. It was 3 days, 3 hours a day, a pretty even mix of fun. We had people come in and present a virtual magic show and a coffee tasting and all this kind of stuff, team building, kind of activities, and a fair amount of this sounds terrible, non-productive work, but retroing on the last quarter, talking about our rocks and what the company's done in the last year, and then looking forward, and we're moving kind of from rocks to OKRs. Not that it's terribly different, but talking about the OKR philosophy and what the OKR for the company is this coming quarter and why and who really owns it and those kind of things. It was great, man. It was great. Afterwards, I was kind of kicking myself for not doing even a smaller version of it sooner. And I think that's the thing I took away is once a quarter, maybe, instead of us just having a 1 hour call a week, maybe once a quarter we have a couple of hours where we have some fun and we do some strategic thinking and planning and talking. It's just not that, it's not that hard. It's not that hard to put together. People really enjoy it. They like feeling connected with the company and the vision and what we're doing and with each other, through the activities. So I guess that's my takeaway is anyone who hasn't done something like that, definitely check it out. It was a ton of fun.
Yeah. I think quarterly is a good cadence for that. It's long enough that you can see whatever you were working on. You can see some kind of result from it, right?
Yep.
And then on the flip side of that, you can take a step back from everything else and everybody just sort of stay, okay, the day-to-day stuff, we're not going to worry about that. Don't mix it in with the day-to-day stuff. Now we're going to think about this in a totally different way. And that, when I'm doing my EOS, which by the way, I'm due for that as well, to do my EOS annual, that's the reason I want to do that on that quarterly basis, because that's where you get that visibility, I guess. And I can see with a team that you would want to, and then it gives you that opportunity to do something fun, right? So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
And what did you guys do for fun, by the way?
Yeah, so the first day we had a kind of virtual treasure hunt, and I link up all this stuff in the blog post. So we'll just link to that. So we did a virtual treasure hunt, which is cool. So we broke into small groups, which was neat. So we had 4 or 5 of us on a team. The second day we had the magician come in and do a magic magic show over Zoom, and it was like Dave totally blew my mind, and like everyone was just like on the floor, amazed. And then Sherry Walling came and talked about kind of mental health and kind of some best practices and things like that. Yep, that was cool. We shared a meal together, which was it was good, but kind of like, do you have your camera on? Do you not? Like, I gotta go get the pizza. Like, it was just a little weird, but just nice to have just a time to kind of talk and stuff.
Right.
That's about the only one that like we just kind of missed on. Like, not that it was wrong, but just kind of was weird. And then the last day we did two really fun things. One was we had it was an Airbnb experience, and the guy is like a coffee aficionado, like a sommelier would be for wine. Talked about like how to grind the beans properly and how to infuse and extract and all like what bitterness means in the process and all this kind of stuff. That was really cool. And then the last one was one I came up with, which was we had a Tinker competition. Do you know Tinker?
No.
Like the no code thing for kids?
No.
So my son does it.
Okay.
It's like a visual coding thing, right? So like move this block here and it makes the guy walk 10 steps, and then you can move this other one. You can have ifs and whiles and all this kind of stuff.
Okay. So it's kind of like visual logo or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it was cool. So we did like a timed competition. Everyone on the team, 20 minutes to build the coolest, Tinker, animation. It's like the guy walking across the screen and he shoots the other guy and all this guy. Like, it was super cool because everyone was terrible at it, and because we'd never done it before, but it was cool to see what folks come up with. Yeah. So those were like the fun activities. I was pretty happy with it overall.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's very exciting. Are any of your team going to MicroConf Europe? Are you going to get to see anybody there?
No. Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Yeah, that would be the dream, but no.
Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, I hope that goes really well, and congrats on having a successful virtual retreat. It's just never quite crossed my mind. I felt like we'll just keep going through this, like with just me and Mike doing it together. It didn't really feel like we needed a lot because mostly it's just hanging out on Slack and chatting about things. But I think that makes sense for you guys.
Yeah, we're 15 people, so like
very different.
Just being able to get the group together was nice.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
Well, Dave, we have a hot topic that we're gonna give our unwarranted 2 cents on, I think, right?
It's worth 2 cents, and you didn't pay for it, but we're going to give you at least that much worth.
Unsolicited, yeah.
Yeah. So the topic, let's give a little bit of background here. For those that aren't in the WordPress space, there has been just a shit ton of WordPress acquisitions this year. I think Post Status was tracking it and said that there were 37 companies that got acquired this year by larger companies, whether it's, like people like Awesome Motive or Automatic or Liquid Web. Those are the top 3 that have been buying people up. But there was a big one recently, and that was Easy Digital Downloads, Affiliate WP, WP Simple Pay, and Sugar Calendar, which are collectively Sandhills Development. They're one of the biggest businesses inside of WordPress right now, short of like Yoast, who also got acquired recently as well. So, and this has caused, a great deal of hand-wringing in the WordPress community about, things, I want it to be like the good old days, and we're really going to miss, because with Pippin gone, it's not going to be the same. And, which it definitely, it kind of rubbed me a little wrong. And I think it rubbed, I'm not the only one here that it rubbed wrong, but it's sort of like, well, what the fuck do you think all these companies are going to do? Do you think they're just going to like run this out until they die? You think Pippin's going to be like in his hospice home slamming out a release of Easy Digital Downloads up there? I mean, really, is that what you thought it was going to happen? It just seemed really unrealistic. And it's like, I'll just shut up now and let you have some thoughts on this. But yes, there's a lot of frustrating stuff in there, and it doesn't seem to be the case that every single business is going to live forever. MailChimp is now being sold off here by Intuit. Yeah. $12 billion exit. Good on the founders there for pulling that off. Who knows? Maybe Basecamp is next. Maybe Basecamp is going to be acquired by A16Z, right?
Mm-hmm.
Probably not.
I mean, like the place like this conversation came from is actually like when you see everybody doing this, and you see this kind of movement, you kind of say, what's wrong with this? And that's kind of what I was saying to myself is like, and like our good friend Brian Castle sold Audience Ops, and super happy for Brian. Congratulations to JD Graffam. And like, it makes me say, because, frankly, for a long time, like my thought was like, oh, at some point, we'll sell Castos. And I'm sure at some point I will sell Castos. But what it really got me thinking is like, what are the alternatives to these people selling at these points, and like I mentioned, like, why not just stay and go public, right? That's like the extreme. Someone pointed out like going public is not an exit. It's more of a fundraising event than an exit, because you're still in the company and you get to liquidate some of your shares and blah, blah, blah. But like, I think what I was really getting at is like, for us as founders who maybe in the back of our minds and maybe, really in the front of our minds have thought that like, I'm going to build this up and sell it and it's going to be life-changing money one day. Like, what is the other thing that is on the table that could happen? And like, why are we seeing so much of this? MailChimp selling for $12 billion is not like a mid-market kind of exit, but for these like,
no, it's an outlier. It's very much an outlier.
50,000 to like $1 million exits. Like I would say that like a lot of these founders probably are back working later, and are doing something else. Like we saw it with Josh Pigford, right? Like sold Baremetrics for whatever reason. Like I think he was just kind of over the business and kind of had taken it as far as he wanted to, but like was back the next week with his next thing. And that's just kind of like what I was thinking about is like, for us who think we want to, grow a business and have it exit at some point, like what are the other options that we can have to kind of stick it out, maybe be the acquirer of other businesses and grow inorganically? That's kind of the tack I was taking on it. Not just like, is it right or wrong to sell a business? Because I think you and I as capitalists kind of say it's perfectly fair. Like as long as you're taking care of the people that helped you get there, and your shareholders, if you have investors, like that's like, that's every business, every founder sells a business, right? Or exits a business, right? It could be that it just goes under because you're tired of working on it. It could be because you die.
Could be voluntary, could be involuntary.
Yeah.
You will exit your business one way or the other.
Yeah. And so like, I don't know, and in this respect, I don't have a lot of answers for what I'm kind of opining about. But when you see so much of one thing happening in our space, like it just is not the alarm bells, but like it kind of just makes me say, is there a different path I should be looking at taking to have a different kind of outcome?
Right. Well, I mean, let's just enumerate all the different paths that you could possibly take here, right? So one of them is you just keep running it the same way that you are running it now, and do that, as long as you want to. And, obviously most entrepreneurs kind of run that path, and sometimes they'll do it until they retire, depending, like if it's a business in the brick and mortar world, you run a dry cleaners, you've got a hardware store or whatever, you probably will run that until you retire if you own it, right? Another option is that you sell it off to somebody else because you're tired of it and you're ready to move on, whether that's, there's been a change in your circumstances, you've got some health problems, family issues, you need money, you are tired of running this thing, and then you want to sell it. Another option is that you can take some investment and pull some chips off the table and keep running it, but maybe get some help to do it so you're not being the sole person doing all of it anymore. There's the one where you could run it and try to grow it like crazy and, go to IPO. I think that's kind of what Jordan wanted to do with CartHook until he got limited with some other stuff with e-commerce platforms, but that was, he was looking for funding. He was trying to grow it, build a larger company, all of that sort of stuff. And that's certainly an option as well. What are some other options that I missed there? I think that's most of them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's most of them. And I think that there's a lot of kind of sub levels within each of those. And I guess that, like, for me, just with our path, or for you two, like, it was kind of just put our kind of paths and say, like, our businesses are kind of providing for ourselves and for our families and our kind of basic needs. And then from there, like, everything else is gravy, And so I think that you got to say, like, once you get to this default to live stage, what are your options? And I think that for me, one thing that's obvious is, like, as long as I'm enjoying doing this, I probably will be doing this anyhow, right? Like, whether something amazing happens and there's a big exit, or the business just blows up and it's super successful, like, I really, most days, really, really like what I do, and, like, work is not really work. It's a lot of fun. And I think as long as that's true for most people, you'll keep running the business.
Yeah.
And I think that the thing for me is more of like a timing and a scale thing, I guess, as I've had time to think about this, and the many smart people that chimed in to this thread in our Slack group, kind of what it came out to was, like, the time horizon can just be a lot longer than you might think originally for yourself and for the business. And it can evolve over time to where, you get into the position of being an awesome motive, or an automatic, where you have the ability to go acquire or acquire other players in your space to expand to new areas and stuff. Like, we've done a little bit of it, but it's been on very small scale. But yeah, I think that's just, I don't know where we're going with this, but those are some of my thoughts, I guess.
Well, I think you're touching on some of the right stuff there. And I think I want to add to that, it's not just about the scale of what you want. It's about ultimately what your goals are. So, like, I can pull 3 different people in my head right here about what their goals are. So let's talk about, like, the difference between Josh Pigford, Rob Walling, and Jordan Gall for a second right there. So Josh wanted to build and run something, but then when it got to a certain size, he realized this wasn't fun anymore. He didn't enjoy that. So he wanted to get back to the build and grow stage. Like, that's where he was the happiest. So that's where he wants to live. So now he sold Baremetrics, went back and is building Maybe, right? So that's one option. Another one is Rob. Rob built Hittail, sold it, put that money into Drip, built that up, sold it, worked post-acquisition for a while with a larger company, and then that wasn't making him happy. He had enough that he was like, I want to do something different, and moved on to, the VC space, right? Where he's now running Tiny Seed and doing that full time. So it wasn't just, he didn't want to go back and have another at bat. He wanted to do an entirely different game, right? He moved on from hockey to baseball. Maybe a little more adjacent than that. The analogy breaks down pretty quickly there. But, and then there's Jordan. Jordan wants to have something that's long-term and grows and goes big, really, really big. That's the scale that he's trying to think at. So he started with Cart Hook, switched from abandoned carts to post-purchase upsells, was trying to get that stalled for some various reasons. And now he's trying to do the same thing again with Rally. Again, a very different mentality that he wants to make that, the unicorn-sized company. I think that's what he wants. So each one of them has very different goals. And the 3 of them, I think, are different goals than you and I. And I think you and I have similar but slightly different goals as well. So let me throw out what I think are our goals, and then you can tell me how wrong I am. So for me right now, my goal is to make Recapture and Validar big enough that they are providing for us, and that, I can do interesting things with them, and maybe I can find some adjacent stuff. But right now, that's all I want to do. Like, I'm not trying to grow it huge. I'm not trying to get funding. I don't want to sell. I just want to run it. I just want to do this, and that's okay. I think with Castos, you're looking a little bigger than I am. I think you've definitely wanted to have a bigger team. You're trying to get it to a bigger scale and get more and bigger, interesting customers and build a company, which is a little bit, we're similar, but yet different, because your scale of thinking is bigger than my scale of thinking right now. And it's not to say that either of us couldn't change at some point, but I think that's kind of where we're at. What would you say? Is that accurate?
That's accurate. Yeah, I think that's accurate. And you know what you kind of walking through that makes me think of is Spanx.
Do you think about Spanx a lot, do you?
I don't think about Spanx much. And I don't even know the CEO's name, but I just have heard her name thrown around a lot as the rare person who can take it from this is like an idea in the garage all the way to a public company. And I say that because I think it's a really unique thing. And I think that is why a lot of people sell, is that they get to like, they Peter principle themselves, right? They're like, okay, I'm like getting so far, and then like, I don't like this anymore, or this is not my thing, or I suck at, running the business at this scale. And she, and we're going to look up the name, was able to go from like just her to running a business, and it's a public company, and it's extremely successful. And my kind of life at Castos has definitely changed from being, the only one with Jonathan and running, marketing and support and sales and product and all this kind of stuff, to now having like a small to medium sized team. And I guess that like looking at the longer term viability of me in the business is that like, I would like that to continue to evolve, because I think that's what really gets me going, is like the new challenge of the next phase of the business. And I think that's probably the same for a lot of people, is like, if you're just doing the same thing and like wash, rinse, repeat the same playbook over and over, we're all probably going to get bored and want to go do something else. But if there's unique challenges in the business as entrepreneurs who just like figuring stuff out, I think that we really key on achieving the next thing. And like, whether that's the new product or a feature, or like from a, like at a business level, figuring out how to run a business at the next, whatever tier. Like, I think that's what we all are looking for.
Yeah. And in fact, now that you've said that, if I look back across all 5 of us that I just mentioned as various examples, the one thing, probably the only thing that really ties us together, aside from that, we're all single founders, bootstrappers, whatever, and we share that in common, is that if we're engaged, if we're learning, if we're growing, then we're happy. Mm-hmm. And it's just a question of what it is you want to learn, and where do you want to take that? Like, you want to learn and go big? Do you want to learn and go middle? Do you want to learn and go somewhere else? Do you want to learn within your thing and just live a certain lifestyle? All of these things are great, but it's when you're not learning, I think that's when people get unhappy. And, I kind of got that sense when people get acquired, that they work for something, that same company that acquires them for a while, and they're just in execution mode. They're not necessarily learning and growing anymore. And they're certainly not in charge of the learning and the growing. They're listening to somebody else's learnings and saying, this is what I want to do with it. And that's, I think, ultimately what makes all of us unhappy, is having somebody else control what we get to learn and what we get to do. So as long as we're in charge of that, it seems like we all are pretty happy about that. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter when you're, if you're moving your company through a certain stage of growth. There are some things, like you talked about the Peter principle of this. There are some things I just never fucking want to learn. When we get, if I were to get recaptured to an IPO stage, God help me, but I would never want to deal with Sarbanes-Oxley. I would never want to deal with quarterly earnings calls. I would never want to deal with like public stock market announcements and PR stuff that we would do. Like, just all of that. When I was in the corporate world, I hated all that crap. And I would hate it if it was my company doing all that crap. So that sounds like hell. And I definitely would not want to do that. So yeah, I think you can self-Peter principle out of that too. Like there's a size at which I am, I am simply not interested in being a certain size. Like Jordan is interested in being a certain size as a company, and I respect the shit out of that, but I don't want to be that size. Like that doesn't interest me. So, it's very much about what it is that you want out of your life for that, right? And that I think is the important part of this to take away is what are your goals? And when you see an acquisition out there, ask yourself not, oh man, why did they do this? But what is it that they needed to get out of this that they weren't getting out of it before? Because they'll usually tell you that. When Pippin wrote up his little thing about why he sold Sandhills, he talked about his father's declining health. He talked about his lack of passion doing this after 10 years or 8 years or whatever, some large number of years. He was sick of doing it. Like, I get that. I totally feel that. But, people were like, oh, it's just not going to be the same without Pippin and WordPress is ruined now. And I'm like, Pippin needs to move on. Like he's ready to move on. Let him go. Let somebody else step in there. Maybe that somebody is you. Like if you feel like this is the way you want WordPress to go, then step in there and make it go that direction, Yep. That's what should happen.
And just to kind of tie this all together, I think like that's why like I'm going to Croatia next week. And that's why you taking the time out of your business to do the No Snow event is so important. And like a lot of us are, nose to the grindstone. I'm so important. I have to work in and on the business all the time. But like the truth is you probably are the most important person in the business as a founder. And if you're not happy or you're not productive or you're not able to be present and productive, then you're doing a big disservice to the business. And like I'm telling myself this because I'm not the person to really do a lot to take care of myself, but see very much now that like I have to, if I want to keep doing this for 5 more years, which is very possible. Like I can see doing this for 5 more years and us getting really big. And I would love to, I don't want to be on a 2-year crash course or else. So like kind of saying like, I got to do things to take care of myself so that I can be present and in this and really do good for the business and for my family and everything, like it all ties together.
Yep. You can't do good by the business if you can't do good by yourself.
Yep. Cool. Well, Dave, really interesting conversation. Folks, first of all, if you have a salesperson or you're a salesperson and you want to help Dave out, shoot us a message, podcast@roguestartups.com. And if you have thoughts on this, we'd love to hear from you. Additionally, you can hit us up on Twitter. Our Twitter handles are on roguestartups.com. And we will see you next week.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Rogue Startups. If you haven't already, head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review for the show. For show notes from each episode and a few extra resources to help you along your journey, head over to roguestartups.com to learn more.